Alright, so welcome to the first answer session of Ask Classic Mini DIY. I've got a bunch of your questions here, and I kind of curated through some of them and combined some that were pretty similar. And I'll go through these and answer all the questions you might have about the Mini Cooper. So first up, big thanks to Lawrence Nada for becoming a patron on my Patreon. I really appreciate that. The money that you guys give really helps me and helps me deliver more videos to you guys. So her question, I'm assuming it's a her, based on Lauren's. I really don't know if that's a girl or a boy's name. Sorry if I'm getting this wrong. But they asked about replacing the front wheel bearings. They recently did the job on their car and they're feeling a little bit friction and it's feeling like it's a little tight. And normally those bearings should not be tight. There's a spacer that sits in the front wheel bearings and it makes those wheels, it makes it so that no matter how hard you torque that down, it's not going to sandwich that bearing and mess it up. So what I would encourage you to do is take that wheel back off and to open up that wheel bearing and make sure that spacer is in there and make sure the spacer is in there the correct orientation. If you have any questions about that or you are a little unsure, I would encourage you to call 7 Mini Parts. They have some really great staff that'll be able to answer that question for you and kind of give you a little bit more in-depth guidance on it. But in short, if you're feeling friction, it's probably not quite right. There's also kind of a rounded washer that sits in there, and I would make sure that that is also seated properly. So seat that washer correctly and make sure that that spacer is in there correctly. Now, the next question I had was from Is Touche. And he or she was asking, why should I or why shouldn't I purchase a Mini Clubman or 1275 GT? Now, personally, I would go for the 1275 GT. I mean, it's got a bigger motor, and I like bigger motors. I like things that go faster. The Mini Clubman is going to be great anyways. I think the biggest motor that it came with was a 1097. Don't quote me on that. That's just rattling around. I think that's the motor that came with, but you're going to get kind of the same look with that 1275 GT and you're going to get a much bigger motor. So I would look for one of those over the Mini Clubman any day. I also had a question about the roof rack that's on my Mini and what kind of roof rack that was. That's from Austin Nave, and the roof rack is actually from a friend of mine, but I did some research for you. And it's a Yakima roof rack with just some standard roof bars. I think they might have been cut down so it fits really nice on the Mini. But Yakima makes them, it's just a gutter mount, and it's the 1A mounts. I'm going to put in the description, if there's any parts or anything that I'm recommending for these answers, I'm going to stick that in the description below next to the name of the person who actually asked the question. So Austin, I will have a link to that Yakima roof rack down there in the description of this video. Look for that. Now, another question I had from Will Jones was, what is my best, or my favorite, I guess, classic Mini model? Mayfair, Clubman, City. I'm not sure if you wanted me to narrow it down just between those three, but if I had to pick between those three, I would definitely go with the Clubman. I really like that kind of Euro square box front of the car. But if it was broader, I really am not tied to any specific Mini. I just like a big motor, and I like the form factor of the Mini. So I would take a Countryman, I'd take a pickup, I would take any variant, to be honest with you. Now, I had another question in here about the jacking points from TF Womble, and those jacking points, the ones that are kind of from the factory work great if you have that factory jack, but if you don't, like most of us, what I would encourage you to do, and Lawrence Nada actually responded to this and had some good input as well, jack from the subframe. So look for places, flat points on the subframe to jack from, either towards the back of it where it's meeting the body of your car, or kind of underneath the whole suspension system right behind the wheel here. That is, if you're jacking it from the front. If it's in the back, there's lots of flat space on that rear subframe that I would jack from. I also jack from the front eyes where the front tie rods connect in. That has been a really effective place for me to jack it up if I'm kind of tight on space. So that works as well. From John Silva, They asked if I could make a video on how to align a Mini. I do have plans to make that video. I am a computer programmer for my day job, so as you can probably imagine, I'm a big fan of computers. If you can, I would just bring the Mini to an alignment shop. It's more than worth the money. That said, I do want to do a video talking about a string alignment. I have to get a little bit better at doing that myself before I show you guys how to do it. But in the future, probably within the next few months or so, I will be doing a string alignment video on my Mini. So keep an eye out for that. And but also know that my recommendation would be just go to an alignment shop. They're much better at it than I am. So I had another good question from Matthew Vizcaino. Sorry if I mispronounced that. They asked if you can have a Rover Mini as a daily driver in the United States. And they also asked what paint is good to use to touch the engine. I'm assuming that means the kind of paint that you would use on the engine. So first I will answer the Rover Mini question. Rover started selling the Mini about 1986. And so there is a little bit of overlap as far as import laws go here in the United States. Unfortunately, the United States has some pretty strict laws and require 25 years, require the car to be 25 years old, which means that you kind of have a little window there where you do have some flexibility on getting a Rover Mini. You have that 1986 to 1991. And obviously, as the years pass, more and more of those, kind of later model cars are going to become available and legal to bring into the United States. Because apparently, after 25 years, the car suddenly becomes okay to have in the United States when it wasn't before. I don't know. Sometimes the U.S. has some pretty backwards laws. But that said, you do have a little bit of room there where you can look for a Rover Mini between 86 and 91. As far as the paint to use on the motor, I have repainted my motor probably 7 times, and none of the paints have really been that great. I think that the best solution for getting your car's engine painted is, one, have the motor out of the car, and it's all about the preparation. So, if you can, bring your motor to a machine shop if you're in the process of rebuilding it and have them acid dip it, bring it right down to bare metal, and then get a primer that is specifically made for high temp and prime the motor from the bare metal. Using a chemical etcher would probably be a good idea before you prime it as well if you have that flexibility. If not, just a really high temp primer is going to be great for you. And then coating it with a high temp enamel past that primer would be a really good solution. If I'm misunderstanding that question and you're asking about touching up the paint on the motor, I really don't have a good recommendation for that. I don't think there's really anything that's going to touch it up very well and really last a long time. I had another question from Jeep 2003, which was, where can I get Venetian blinds for my back window, or do people normally fit them from a VW? I have seen in the 6 years that I've been working and driving around and going to car shows with this Mini, I've seen one Mini with Venetian blinds on the back of the car, and the person who has that car lives here in Charlotte, and as far as I know, they purchased it with those Venetian blinds already installed. I don't really think that there's a place to pick those up anymore. After you asked that question, I spent probably a good 15-20 minutes trying to find them online, and I could not find them anywhere. So it might be something that you're just going to have to get made custom, or hope that somebody has a Mini that already has them and decides they want to sell it. So, sorry. So I've only got a couple more questions here, and these ones are a lot more technical. I kind of was saving these ones for last. The Clio Rider asks, sounds like they've been having some trouble starting the car after short runs, like a 5-minute drive, and then getting it started directly after. But when you leave it for 5 minutes, it starts up fine. And you mentioned some carb icing or something like that. I think that's pretty unlikely, especially if you were only driving it for about 5 minutes. I'm not sure where you're located in the world, but generally when your carb ices up, it happens when you're at maintained high speeds, where the air has enough time to continuously vortex inside your intake manifold and everything. So that's when your carbs really are going to ice up. If you're just jumping from like here to down the street to go get some like beer at the store or something, you're not going to have carb icing, most likely, unless you're living in like northern Canada. And as far as the kind of struggling to start up after that, after the short runs, the only thing that I could guess is that maybe after you shut it down, it's still kind of pushing a little fuel into the cylinders. And then maybe that fuel is sitting in those cylinders, and when you try and start it up, it's just a little like a little flooded. Not to the point where obviously it's gonna hurt anything, or but it is gonna keep you from starting your car for a little bit. But the time that you're leaving it and letting it sit for that 5-10 minutes afterwards, where you're like, oh, I'm having some trouble starting my motor, I'm just gonna let it sit. What you're probably letting it do is that you're letting that gas evaporate, that petrol evaporate out of those cylinders, and then you're probably more likely to get the car started up. This is just kind of a guess. It's kind of hard to say when I don't have the car in front of me, but that would be my kind of inclination. So honestly, it's an old car. That's kind of just par for the course. You could try and make sure that your float bowls are actuating properly and that you're not outputting too much fuel into the motor. But I don't know if it's worth it to go down that route. If it's only a couple minutes that you have to wait for it, it's not that big a deal. To me, it would be if it was on my car. The next question I have is from Dennis Vezovitz. Sorry if I mispronounced that, but you asked, what are the proper suspension angles that are good for race and road, especially for 12-inch wheels, as well as the right wheel dimensions. And you also mentioned that you're not talking about diameter, but also wideness, etc. So it's a complex question based on what you said here. Now, it's hard to say exactly. And what I mean to say is that for a racetrack and for, really hammering down and you're taking the car to the track, you want the best performance. Generally speaking, a wider wheel is going to be better. You're going to get more traction. Your engine's going to have a better ability to transfer the power from the motor down to the wheels and then to the road, with more surface area on the wheels. And then on top of that, the suspension angles, it's kind of a trial and error. More camber is generally better, but you could definitely go overboard with the camber. I mean, if you're going on a racetrack and it's not crazy amounts of turning and switching and all that stuff, it's more of a straight track, a ton of camber isn't going to really do a whole lot. As far as your toe, you're really just going to want to go by the spec in the Haynes manual. Even on a racetrack, you can get real nitty-gritty and get it just right. But for the common person who's just hitting the track with their Mini, like you or me, you're probably just going to be better off falling in line with the Haynes manual specs. I don't know them off the top of my head. I would look in the Haynes manual for your model year and just check what the suspension recommendations are there. That manual has pretty much the best information out there for it. And then as far as road driving, I have a 10x5 wheel on my car. 12x5 would be good too. It's kind of a good in-between. I think 4 and 4.5 is too small. You don't get enough traction, you don't get enough wheel on the road. And then 6 is really big, and sometimes you rub when you hit in a corner or if you turn your wheel too much. So I think 10x5 or 12x5 is probably your sweet spot in the tires as far as width goes. And then I would go 100% based on the Haynes manual for road driving. And now finally, I've got one more question, and it's from V Devo V. And you said that you just got your Mini dyno tested and it's running a little bit rich at 11.8 to 1. and you want to change the needle in your carb. You can't get anyone to agree on a needle. That's not surprising. And that your current one feels really close to perfect. You asked if there's a chart for the HIF 44 carb needles, and you're trying to avoid switching between 15 different needles and dyno testing every single one of the needles. Yeah, so carb needles. They are one of those things that everyone has an opinion on. There's definitely no perfectly right carb needle. There's not a holy grail of carb needle that it's going to be perfect for your HIF 44. I've been having challenges with getting the right needle on my HIF 44, so I definitely feel your pain on this one. I am a little bit jealous that you got your mini dyno tested. I've been trying to find a place here locally that'll do that for a while. And as far as the richness goes, what I would do, if your current needle feels really close to perfect, it feels pretty good, there is an adjustment screw on the back of your HIF 44, and I would adjust that a little bit. Just bring that in or out a little bit. That's going to adjust how much fuel is being let into the motor in comparison to the amount of air that's going in with it. It's kind of fine-tuning for the needle that's already in the car. And honestly, if the dyno shop can't figure out how to do that, I would probably question their ability to dyno tune a car at all. It's literally an adjustment screw on the back of the SU carburetor. It takes like 3 seconds to look it up on a Google search for them. So maybe have a conversation with them, let them know that adjustment screw's back there, and when they put your car in the dyno again, they can adjust that screw manually while they're dyno tuning your car. I think that any shop worth their salt should be able to do that, regardless of whether or not they're comfortable with SU carburetors. But that said, your richness is you're gonna pretty easily be able to lean that out by adjusting that mixture screw on the back. The minis do have a tendency to run a little rich, so even if you adjust it to just the right spot, eventually it's going to run out. It's going to run a little rich again. It's just kind of the nature of those SU carburetors. So I hope you found this helpful. There were a lot of questions and a lot of different things on here. Some of the things in here I didn't really have a good answer for, or I couldn't find the right information to provide you guys, so I didn't want to give you the wrong info. But I hope you guys found this helpful. If you did, let me know in the comment section. If there's anything you didn't like about this session and the answers that I gave, or you think that I'm like wildly wrong, please tell me in the comment section so that I know and I can learn from it, assuming that I was wrong. But other than that, I hope you guys have a wonderful evening, and check back for more mini videos over the next couple weeks. See you guys.